The chamber was almost empty when Daeho Kim walked in. His footsteps echoed against the crystal walls of the Galactic Council Hall. He had been Earth's ambassador for 23 years. 23 years of watching alien representatives talk over him. 23 years of human achievements being credited to others. 23 years of being told humanity should be grateful for their seat at the table. Today was his last day. Daeho approached the central podium where Council Speaker Vril Toth sat. The alien's skin shimmered with purple disgust as the human approached. Around them, only a handful of representatives bothered to attend. Most had sent junior aides. Humans weren't important enough for their full attention. Ambassador, Vril Toth's voice dripped with boredom. Your scheduled statement time is 5 minutes. Please be brief. Daeho didn't smile. He didn't show anger. He simply activated the communication device that would broadcast his words across every human facility in the galaxy. His voice was calm and clear. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws all support, personnel, technology, and cooperation from the Galactic Council. We are going home. The chamber fell silent. Vril Toth's eyes widened slightly. Then he laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound that other representatives joined. They thought it was a joke or a bluff. Ambassador Kim, such theatrics are beneath even your species. You cannot simply, we can. We are. Goodbye, Speaker. Daeho turned and walked out. He didn't look back. Behind him, he heard Vril Toth calling for order, dismissing the statement as an emotional outburst. The council representatives were already returning to other business. They didn't understand. They wouldn't. Not for weeks. Across the galaxy, the message reached human facilities simultaneously. Every human doctor, engineer, teacher, trader, and peacekeeper received the same encrypted orders. Pack your things. Leave your posts. Come home. No explanations. No goodbyes. On Gateway Station, the massive trade hub that connected all major space lanes, Minho Choi read the message 3 times. He was the chief engineer, responsible for maintaining the quantum navigation systems that allowed thousands of ships to travel safely through hyperspace every day. The systems were incredibly complex. He had spent 15 years learning their secrets, fixing problems that alien engineers couldn't even identify. Minho looked at his assistant, a young alien named Threk, who had worked beside him for 2 years. Threk was smart, but didn't understand the deeper systems. None of them did. They relied on Minho for everything, though his official title was just consultant. His alien supervisor took credit for all the major repairs. Threk, Minho said quietly, I'm leaving tomorrow. Here are the basic operation manuals. The alien's face went pale. Leaving? But the quantum calibration is due next week. You always handle that. You'll have to learn. The manuals have instructions, but those manuals don't cover half of what you do. You're always fixing things that aren't in any manual. Minho shrugged. Then you'll need to figure it out. He went to his quarters and began packing. He felt a small twist of guilt. But orders were orders. And honestly, after 15 years of being treated like a servant while doing the work of a master engineer, he was ready to go home. Across the medical stations, Haejin Park was having similar conversations. She commanded the medical frigate, Mercy's Hand, which had been stationed at Varan Colony for 8 months, fighting a deadly plague. Her team of human doctors had brought the outbreak under control. The alien medical staff watched and learned, but they didn't truly understand the innovative diagnostic methods Haejin had developed. Dr. Park, you can't leave now, the station medical director pleaded. The plague isn't fully eradicated. We need your expertise. You have the treatment protocols. You've seen how we work. You'll be fine. But we don't understand half of what your team does. You work on instinct. You see patterns we miss. Haejin felt her heart tighten. She knew people would die if she left, but she also knew this was necessary. The galaxy needed to learn that humans weren't just convenient tools to be dismissed and undervalued. I'm sorry, she said, and she meant it. Her crew packed their equipment in silence. They all felt the weight of the decision, but none of them questioned it. They had all been there when the Council rejected humanity's proposal for equal voting rights. They remembered the laughter when Earth requested fair credit for scientific achievements. They knew this moment had been coming. In the financial districts of New Centauri, Jiwon Lee was shutting down her workstation. She was officially listed as a junior analyst in the galactic banking system, but she was actually the only person who understood the quantum encryption protocols that secured trillions of credits in daily transactions. She had designed most of the security systems herself, working late nights while her alien supervisors took long lunches. Jiwon, wait. Her supervisor rushed over. You can't just leave. Who will handle the encryption updates? The documentation is in the system, she replied, knowing full well that the documentation only covered basic operations. The real work, the constant adjustments and innovations that kept everything secure, that knowledge was in her head. Documentation? Jiwon? You do things no documentation covers. Then you should have paid attention when I tried to teach you. Her voice was sharper than she intended. But years of frustration finally leaked through. Goodbye, Director. Ships began departing from every corner of the galaxy. Human vessels, civilian and military, converged on predetermined routes home. They moved in organized silence, offering no explanations to confused alien authorities. Within 48 hours, 90% of humanity's galactic presence simply vanished. On Earth, Daeho Kim met with the Human Defense Command. Admiral Taeyong Song reviewed the withdrawal reports. All personnel accounted for, Ambassador. We're home. And the Council's response? They've sent 3 messages. Each one demands we explain ourselves. The tone is getting angrier. Daeho allowed himself a small smile. Let them be angry. Send no response. Seal the borders. No ships in or out without explicit authorization. And monitor everything. I want to know every system failure, every problem, every consequence. You think they'll come begging? Eventually. But first, they need to understand what we actually did for them. That will take time. In the council chamber, Vriltoth finally stopped laughing. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Humans were really leaving. All of them. The primitive species was actually abandoning the gift of galactic civilization. Let them go, he announced to the council. They'll realize their mistake within a month. We've managed for millennia without them. We'll barely notice they're gone. The other representatives agreed. After all, what had humans really contributed? They were just workers. Useful, perhaps, but easily replaced. None of them noticed the small problems already beginning. A trade computer, glitching. A medical report filed incorrectly. A navigation calculation taking twice as long as usual. Tiny cracks in the foundation. The humans had left in complete silence. Soon, the screaming would begin. 3 weeks after the humans left, Gateway Station experienced its first major failure. The quantum navigation system that guided ships through hyperspace began showing error messages that no one understood. Threk, the young alien engineer who had worked under Minho Choi, stared at the diagnostic screen with growing panic. I don't understand, he muttered, flipping through the manuals Minho had left behind. The manual says to recalibrate the quantum locks every 7 days, but it doesn't explain how to identify which locks need adjustment. His supervisor, Chief Engineer Volth, leaned over his shoulder. What do you mean? Minho did this every week. It only took him an hour. Yes. But he never wrote down what he actually did. He just looked at the system and knew. These manuals only cover basic operations. Volth felt irritation rising. How dare that human leave them in this situation? Threk tried. He really did. He followed every instruction in the manual precisely. He recalibrated the quantum locks according to the documented procedure. The error messages disappeared. And for 6 hours, everything seemed fine. Then 3 ships collided in hyperspace. The navigation system had sent them identical coordinates. Something in the quantum calculations was wrong. The ships materialized in the same physical space. The explosion killed 4,000 beings instantly. Another 2,000 died from radiation exposure over the following days. The investigation revealed that the calibration had been done correctly according to the manual. But some deeper adjustment was missing. Something Minho had always done but never documented because it seemed obvious to him. Something that required understanding the underlying physics at a level that took years to develop. Valth sent an emergency message to the council requesting Minho's return. The message was ignored. Earth's borders remained sealed. On Varan Colony, the medical situation was deteriorating rapidly. The plague that Heijin Park's team had nearly eliminated was spreading again. Dr. Kelvin, who had worked alongside the humans, stared at patient charts in confusion. "I don't understand," she told her staff. "We're following the exact treatment protocol the humans left. Why isn't it working?" A nurse brought up the medical database. "Doctor, the protocol says to administer the antiviral compound in standard doses. But look at these notes from Dr. Park's personal files. She was constantly adjusting doses based on individual patient responses. Sometimes, triple the standard dose. Sometimes, half. But there's no formula for those adjustments. How did she know what to change? She called it medical intuition. She said humans learned to recognize patterns in patient symptoms that indicated how they'd respond to treatment." Kelvin felt frustration building. Medical intuition? That wasn't science. That was guessing. But the results had been undeniable. Under Heijin's care, the survival rate had been 87%. Now, 3 weeks later, it was down to 42% and falling. She tried to replicate Heijin's methods, but every adjustment she made seemed wrong. Patients who should have responded well died unexpectedly. Others who seemed hopeless, somehow, survived. There was no pattern she could identify. Within a month, the plague had spread to 3 neighboring systems. Millions were infected. Kelvin sent desperate messages to Earth, begging Heijin to return or at least provide guidance. No response came. In the financial sectors, chaos was spreading. Jiwan Li's encryption systems were failing in ways no one had predicted. The quantum protocols that secured banking transactions had a built-in degradation factor. They needed constant updating to stay ahead of potential hackers. Jiwan had been performing these updates weekly, making small adjustments that seemed minor but were actually critical. Without her, the security degraded rapidly. Within 4 weeks, the first major fraud was detected. A criminal syndicate had exploited a weakness in the encryption to steal 18 billion credits. The theft triggered a cascade of panic. If one transaction could be compromised, all transactions were suspect. Banks across the galaxy began freezing accounts. Trade ground to a halt as merchants refused to accept potentially fraudulent payments. The galactic economy, which had grown steadily for centuries, went into freefall. Currencies that had been stable for generations collapsed within days. The council called emergency sessions. Representatives shouted at each other, blaming everyone except themselves. Vriltoth tried to maintain order, but his authority was crumbling. "This is a temporary setback," he insisted. "We simply need to hire new engineers, new doctors, new financial experts." "From where?" demanded Representative Thola of the Nilari. "Every species is facing the same problems. The humans weren't just workers. They were the glue holding everything together." Nonsense. They were junior staff, assistants, consultants. Surely we can replace them, but they couldn't. Job postings went unanswered or attracted only candidates who were obviously unqualified. The few experts who did apply demanded salaries 10 times what humans had been paid. And even when hired, they struggled to understand the systems humans had maintained. On the borders of council space, the peaceful Nilari species faced their own crisis. The aggressive Kryn Empire had been contained for decades by Council peacekeeping forces. At least, that's what everyone believed. What they didn't know was that 70% of those peacekeeping forces were human volunteers. When the humans withdrew, the peacekeeping forces effectively collapsed. The remaining alien troops were scattered, disorganized, and untrained in the coordination methods humans had developed. The Kryn saw an opportunity and attacked. Nalari Prime. The Nalari homeworld fell within 6 days. The planetary defenses that should have held for months simply failed. The defense grid operators had relied on human technicians to maintain the targeting systems. Without them, the systems were too slow, too imprecise, too late. 2 billion Nalari died in the initial bombardment. Another billion were enslaved. The survivors fled to refugee camps on neighboring worlds, overwhelming systems already struggling with the plague and economic collapse. Representative Thola stood before the council, her body shaking with grief and rage. My people are dying. Our homeworld is enslaved. And where are the peacekeepers we were promised? Where is the protection we paid for? Vril Toth had no answer. The truth was too humiliating to admit. The council had been taking credit for human efforts while paying humans almost nothing. Now the bill was due, and they couldn't pay it. Back on Earth, the monitoring stations tracked every disaster. Admiral Taeyong Song compiled daily reports for the human government. Each report was grimmer than the last. The Nalari genocide is complete, he told the assembled leaders. Gateway Station has had 14 more collisions. The Varan plague has spread to 8 systems now. The economic damage is approaching 40 trillion credits. President Minji Han listened in silence. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands gripped the armrests of her chair tightly. Casualties? Estimated 14 million dead so far. Projected to reach 200 million within 3 months, if current trends continue. Can we help? Militarily, we could stop the Kryn expansion in a week. Medically, Dr. Park's team could contain the plague in a month. Economically, Ji-Wan Lee could restore banking security in days. But if we return now, nothing changes. They'll welcome us back, use us, take credit for the recovery, and within a year, we'll be back where we started. Undervalued, dismissed, invisible. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the terrible calculus. Return now and save millions, but teach nothing. Or wait and let the galaxy burn until the lesson was truly learned. President Han looked around the room at the human leadership. We need a vote. All in favor of maintaining the withdrawal? Every hand went up. Even those with tears in their eyes voted to stay away. The decision was unanimous and heartbreaking. On Gateway Station, Threk finally gave up trying to fix the navigation system. He sat at Minho's old desk and wept in frustration. Around him, the station's lights flickered as power systems began failing. Those had been maintained by a human engineer named Salmon, who everyone assumed was just a cleaning supervisor. She had fixed electrical problems during her cleaning rounds for 12 years. In the medical wards of Varan Colony, Dr. Kelvin watched another patient die despite her best efforts. She had tried everything. The plague was winning. In the banking centers, financial analysts watched centuries of economic stability evaporate. The systems Ji-Wan had built were collapsing without her constant care. And in the council chamber, Vril Toth finally understood the truth. The humans hadn't been junior staff. They had been the foundation. And foundations, once removed, bring everything crashing down. He drafted a message to Earth. Not a demand this time. A request. Almost a plea. He asked for a meeting to discuss terms for humanity's return. The response came 3 days later. Just 2 words from Daeho Kim. Not yet. No. Not yet. No. No. The galaxy continued to burn. 3 months after the humans left, the galaxy was unrecognizable. What had started as minor inconveniences had become a complete systematic collapse. The council met in emergency session every day now. But their meetings accomplished nothing. They had no solutions, only recriminations. Vriltoth was gone. A coalition of angry representatives had removed him from power in what they politely called a vote of no confidence. The reality had been closer to a riot. His replacement, Thane Gorham of the Vakari species, inherited a civilization on the verge of total failure. The first thing Gorham did was commission a comprehensive study of what humans had actually been doing. The results were devastating. The study revealed that humans had been involved in virtually every major technological advancement of the past 2 centuries. The quantum drives that allowed faster-than-light travel? The breakthrough equation had been solved by a human physicist named Sunmi Han. She had presented it to her alien supervisor as a suggestion, and he had published it under his own name, the universal medical database that every doctor relied on, built entirely by human programmers who made it look like a council project. The atmospheric processors that allowed terraforming? Designed by human engineers who were credited as installation technicians. The list went on and on. Humans had been the invisible architects of galactic civilization, content to work in the shadows, while others took the glory. Now those shadows were empty, and everything was falling apart. On Gateway Station, the navigation failures had become so frequent that ships stopped using it. The massive hub that had once processed 50,000 ship movements per day now handled fewer than 100. Most of those ended in delays or minor collisions. The station was effectively dead. Threk had given up trying to maintain the quantum systems. Instead, he spent his days documenting how much they had relied on Minho Choi. His report was thousands of pages long and could be summarized in one sentence. They had taken everything and learned nothing. The station's population had dropped from 2 million to less than 50,000. Without trade, there was no reason to stay. The remaining residents were mostly those too poor to leave. They survived on emergency rations in a dying station that groaned and flickered like a wounded beast. In Varan's space and beyond, the plague had become a pandemic. 8 systems were now infected, with the death toll approaching 50 million. Dr. Kelvin had stopped trying to find solutions. She simply tried to make the dying comfortable, which was all her limited resources allowed. But the plague was just one medical crisis among many. Without human doctors and their inexplicable diagnostic intuition, routine medical problems became deadly. Surgical success rates dropped. Recovery times extended. Alien medical schools tried to teach what humans had done naturally. But you couldn't teach instinct or pattern recognition that came from some uniquely human way of thinking. The economic collapse had entered a new phase. It wasn't just fraud anymore. The entire concept of galactic currency was breaking down. Without secure transactions, people returned to barter systems. Centuries of financial evolution reversed in weeks. Advanced civilizations were trading goods like primitive societies. Ji-Wan Lee's quantum encryption hadn't just secured money, it had secured everything. Government communications, scientific data, personal records, all of it had relied on her systems. Now, nothing was secure. Secrets spilled across public networks. Private information became public. Trust, the foundation of any civilization, evaporated. The Kryn Empire, meanwhile, was expanding rapidly. After conquering the Nalari, they moved on to weaker species. The Council's defense forces were a joke without human coordination. 3 more species faced extinction in the following month. Thane Gorham tried everything. He offered trade concessions to any species that could provide replacement engineers. None could. He quadrupled the offered salaries for medical staff. No qualified doctors applied. He begged military contractors to rebuild the defense forces. They laughed at him. Finally, he authorized a diplomatic mission to Earth. Not a message this time, but a physical fleet carrying the Council's formal representatives. They carried documents offering humanity equal voting rights, fair compensation, public credit for their achievements. Everything the Council had refused before. The fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system and sent a greeting. The response came from Earth Defense Command, and the voice was Daeho Kim's. You may orbit Neptune. You may not approach Earth. You have 1 hour to state your business. The Council's lead diplomat, a Trellin named Sovath, presented their offer. It was generous, comprehensive, and desperate. He spoke for 40 minutes, outlining every concession, every benefit, every guarantee. Daeho's response was brief. Your offer is noted. You may return to Council space. We will provide our answer in due time. But Ambassador Kim, the galaxy is dying. Billions are suffering. As much time as we decide is necessary. Go home, Diplomat Sovath. The Council fleet returned with nothing. Gorham read their report and felt something he had never experienced before. True helplessness. The most powerful governmental body in the galaxy could do nothing except wait for humanity's mercy. On Earth, the debate was intense. President Minji Han convened the Global Council, which included representatives from every nation and major colony. The question was simple but agonizing. When do we return? Admiral Tae-Young Song presented the military perspective. Earth's defenses are now stronger than the entire Council fleet. We could take control of the galaxy by force if we wanted. We need nothing from them. Economics Minister Junho Park countered. But we're not conquerors. We're traders and builders. Extended isolation hurts us too. Our economy is stagnating without galactic markets. Dr. Haejin Park, recalled from her frigate to consult, spoke quietly. 50 million dead from the plague. 200 million from various medical failures. 14 billion facing starvation from economic collapse. Daeho Kim, also recalled to Earth, stood to speak. The room fell silent. He had become something of a folk hero for his final address to the Council. We left for a reason, he said. Not revenge, not punishment. We left because the galaxy needed to learn that respect cannot be demanded or bought. It must be earned through recognition of mutual value. The question isn't whether we return. We will return. The question is whether enough has changed to make our return meaningful. A young representative named Eunji An raised her hand. She was new to the Global Council, having been elected just before the withdrawal. Ambassador Kim, with respect, we're talking about billions of lives. The room erupted in argument. Some agreed with Eunji, arguing that human compassion demanded immediate action. Others supported Daeho's position that premature return would waste the sacrifice already made. President Han let them argue for an hour before calling for order. I propose a middle path. We return, but not to the Council. We offer assistance directly to individual species on our terms. We build new relationships based on equality and mutual respect. The old Council can collapse. We'll help build something better. The vote was close but passed. Earth would end its isolation, but would not rejoin the Council. Instead, they would offer conditional aid to any species willing to meet them as equals. Haejin Park immediately volunteered to lead the medical relief mission. I'm going to Varan space first. That plague is my responsibility. It's not your responsibility, President Han corrected. You tried to help. They didn't value it. You left. Their failure to maintain your work is their responsibility. Perhaps, but I'm still a doctor. I can't watch people die when I can save them. Minho Choi also volunteered to return to Gateway Station, but only on specific terms. I'll fix the navigation system. I'll train their engineers properly this time, but I'm not a consultant anymore. I'm the chief engineer, and everyone knows it. No more alien supervisors taking credit for my work. Ji-Won Lee was more reluctant. The banking system can wait. They need to feel that pain longer. Let them understand that security isn't automatic. It's built by people who deserve respect. Plans began forming for humanity's return. But it would be a different return than anyone expected. Humans would come back as partners, not servants. As teachers, not tools. As equals, not subordinates. In Council space, Thane Gorham received word that humans were preparing some kind of response. He felt a flicker of hope for the first time in months. Maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild. But he also knew that whatever the humans offered would come with conditions. Hard conditions. Fair conditions. The kind of conditions the Council should have accepted decades ago. The age of taking humanity for granted was over. What came next would be decided by whether the galaxy could truly learn from its mistakes. 6 months after the humans walked away, the galaxy had descended into chaos beyond anyone's worst predictions. A third of all space stations had been evacuated due to life support failures. 14 species were officially listed as endangered or extinct. The Council itself was fragmenting, as member species blamed each other, formed rival factions, or simply withdrew from galactic affairs entirely. Thane Gorham sat in the Council chamber surrounded by empty seats. Of the 247 member species, only 83 still sent representatives. The rest had given up on the Council entirely. Some had fallen into civil war. Others had retreated into isolation. A few had ceased to exist. He was reading historical records, trying to understand how this had happened. How had an entire civilization become so dependent on one species without realizing it? The answer, he discovered, was both simple and damning. Willful blindness. Humans had arrived in galactic society 200 years ago with nothing but determination and curiosity. They had been welcomed as junior members, expected to learn and follow, and they had learned. They had learned everything. But while learning, they had also been quietly fixing things, improving systems, solving problems that others didn't even notice. Gorham found records of a council meeting from 70 years ago. A human delegate had proposed recognizing human contributions to quantum drive efficiency. The proposal had been dismissed as arrogant posturing. The council speaker at the time had actually said, "Why would we credit assistants for doing their jobs?" But those assistants had increased drive efficiency by 40%. Assistants had solved the waste heat problem. Assistants had reduced the failure rate from 3% to 0.01%. Assistants had done everything while supervisors napped. Now, those supervisors were discovering that they had no idea how anything actually worked. Gorham closed the files and activated the communication system. He was going to do something unprecedented. He was going to broadcast directly to every inhabited world, bypassing the official channels, speaking not as council speaker but as one desperate being to another. The broadcast went live across all frequencies. Gorham's face appeared on billions of screens. "My name is Thane Gorham. I am the speaker of what remains of the Galactic Council. I speak to you today not with demands or platitudes, but with truth and shame. We failed. The Council failed. I failed. We failed the humans, and in doing so, we failed ourselves. For 2 centuries, humanity contributed more to galactic civilization than any other species. They built our technology. They maintained our systems. They solved our problems. They saved our lives, and we repaid them with dismissal, disrespect, and theft of credit. We treated them as servants when they were the foundation upon which everything rested. Now they are gone, and we are reaping what we sowed. The navigation systems they maintained have failed. The medical advances they developed have been lost. The economic security they built has collapsed. Billions have died because we were too arrogant to acknowledge what they gave us. This message is not for the Council. The Council is finished. This message is for humanity. Wherever they watch from their distant system. We were wrong. I was wrong. We beg not for your return, but for your forgiveness. Not for our sake, but for the innocents, suffering from our mistakes. To the human people, I can only say this. You were right to leave. You tried to tell us. You tried to teach us. We wouldn't listen. You walked away in silence. And that silence has been the loudest condemnation we could have received. If you choose to help us again, we will listen, this time. If you choose not to, we have earned that judgment. To everyone else listening, remember this. Remember how we destroyed ourselves through arrogance. Remember what we lost because we couldn't see value in those different from us. Remember the price of taking people for granted. Gorham ended the transmission. He didn't know if it would matter. He didn't know if humans were even watching. But he had spoken the truth, and sometimes that was all you could do. On Earth, in the Global Council chamber, they watched Gorham's broadcast in silence. When it ended, President Minji Han looked around the room. Opinions? Ambassador Daeho Kim spoke first. It's sincere. I've known Gorham for 30 years. He means every word. Well, that doesn't change the millions dead. Admiral Tae-young Song said quietly. Sincerity doesn't bring them back. Eun-ji-an stood. The young representative had become increasingly vocal in the past months. No. It doesn't bring them back. But Admiral, how many more will die if we continue to delay? We've made our point. The galaxy knows what we contributed. They know what they lost. Continuing to withhold aid isn't teaching anymore. It's just cruelty. It's not about cruelty, Daeho countered. It's about ensuring lasting change. If we return too soon, Ambassador, I respect your experience, but I disagree with your timing. Yes, we needed to leave. Yes, they needed to suffer consequences, but consequences have been delivered. Now we need to show that humanity isn't just competent. We're compassionate. We're better than they were. The room erupted in debate. Some supported immediate return. Others argued for more time. The discussion went on for hours. Dr. Heejin Park had been sitting quietly in the gallery, watching. Finally, she asked for permission to speak. As one of the people most directly affected by the decision, her voice carried weight. I've spent 6 months watching death counts rise from diseases I could cure. 6 months knowing that every day I stay here, people die. People who didn't make the decisions that led to this. Children who never dismissed human contributions. Ordinary beings just trying to live their lives. She paused, gathering her thoughts. When I left Varan Colony, I told myself it was necessary. That sometimes hard choices require hard hearts. And I still believe we were right to leave. But we left to teach a lesson, not to become executioners. The lesson is learned. I can see it in Gorham's eyes. I can see it in every message begging for help. They know. They understand. Continuing to punish them doesn't teach anything new. It just makes us cruel. Admiral Song stood. Dr. Park, I understand your compassion. But my responsibility is Earth's security. If we return to a hostile galaxy, the galaxy isn't hostile anymore, Admiral. It's broken. There's a difference. Hostile we defend against. Broken we help fix. If we choose to be the people we claim to be. The debate continued, but Eunji and Heijin's arguments were gaining support. Finally, President Han called for a vote. All in favor of conditional return to galactic society? The vote was closer than before but still passed. Humans would return, but on completely new terms. The conditions were drafted over the next week. They were fair, but firm. Humanity would provide assistance, but the old council structure must be dissolved completely. A new government would be built from scratch with equal representation. Credit for work would go to those who did the work. Compensation would be fair and standardized. Respect would be mandatory. Any species that agreed to these terms could receive immediate aid. Any species that refused would be left to solve their own problems. Daeho Kim was chosen to deliver the message. He recorded it carefully, aware that these words would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. People of the galaxy, this is Ambassador Daeho Kim of Earth. Humanity has heard your calls for help. We have watched your suffering. We have mourned your dead. And we have made a decision. We will return. Not as servants or subordinates. Not as junior members grateful for scraps. We return as equals, offering partnership to those willing to accept it. We will help rebuild what was lost. But we will build it better this time. Built on respect. Built on recognition. Built on truth. The old council is finished. Those who wish to work with humanity can join us in creating something new. A galactic commonwealth where every species has a voice. Where credit goes to those who earn it. Where value is recognized regardless of age or origin. We are sending aid ships immediately to any world that requests them. Medical teams. Engineers. Teachers. They come freely, asking only for respect in return. To those who cannot offer respect, we offer nothing. We did not walk away in anger. We walked away in hope that you would learn. Some of you have. Some of you haven't. The difference will determine your future. The message was broadcast across the galaxy. Within hours, requests for aid flooded Earth's communication networks. Some were from governments. Some from individual colonies. Some from species representatives begging for help before their people went extinct. Heijin Park prepared her medical ships. Minho Choi assembled his engineering teams. Ji-Wan Lee, still reluctant, agreed to at least consult on financial security. The humans were coming back, but they were coming back on their terms. The galaxy was about to learn what equality actually meant. The medical frigate Mercy's Hand dropped out of hyperspace above Varan Colony exactly 7 months after it had left. Dr. Heejin Park stood on the bridge, looking at the planet below. Even from orbit, she could see the damage. Entire cities gone dark. Agricultural zones burned. The plague had ravaged this world. Doctor, her communications officer said quietly, we're receiving thousands of transmissions. They're begging us to land. Tell them we're coming. And tell them we come as representatives of Earth, not the Council. The frigate landed at the main medical facility where Heejin had worked before. Dr. Kelvin was waiting at the landing pad. The alien doctor looked like she had aged 20 years in 7 months. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow. When Heijin descended the ramp, Kelvin fell to her knees. Dr. Park, please forgive us. We didn't understand. We didn't value what you gave us. We were fools. Heijin helped her stand. I'm not here for apologies, Dr. Kelvin. I'm here to save lives. Are you ready to work? Yes, God, yes. Tell me what to do. First, show me the current infection data. All of it. Every case, every death, every pattern you've observed. They worked for 72 hours straight. Heijin's team brought new equipment, new treatments, refined versions of the protocols she had developed. But more importantly, she brought knowledge. This time, she didn't just treat patients. She explained every decision to the alien medical staff. Watch this patient's respiratory rate, she told Kelvin. See how it increases before the fever spikes? That's your warning sign. You increase the antiviral dose now, before the fever, and survival rate jumps 20%. But the protocol doesn't mention respiratory rate as a factor, because I couldn't explain it in a protocol. It's pattern recognition. You have to watch hundreds of patients to see it. Now you're watching. Now you're learning. Within a week, the infection rate began dropping. Within a month, the plague was contained. Within 3 months, it was eradicated. But this time, the alien doctors understood how it had been done. They had learned, truly learned, because Heijin had taught them as equals, not as subordinates. When Heijin prepared to leave, Kelvin gave her something unexpected. A formal treaty between Earth and Varan. It granted Earth equal trade status, recognized human medical superiority, and included a clause requiring full credit and fair compensation for all human contributions. Our government approved this yesterday, Kelvin said. We want to be the first to join your commonwealth. If you'll have us. Heijin smiled. We'll have you. Welcome to a new beginning. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Minho Choi returned to Gateway Station and found Threk waiting with the entire engineering staff. They had prepared a formal ceremony recognizing Minho as chief engineer, with full authority and public credit. We know we should have done this years ago, Threk said. We were wrong to take credit for your work. It won't happen again. We're gonna 2000. Unhoberzint. We were wrong to take credit for your work. Minho accepted the position. But more importantly, he demanded changes to how the station operated. No more credit theft. No more dismissal of junior staff. Every person's contribution would be recognized. He spent 6 months rebuilding the navigation systems. But this time, he trained the alien engineers properly. Not as subordinates, but as students. He explained the underlying physics. He showed them how to recognize problems before they became critical. He gave them the tools to succeed on their own. You don't need me permanently, he told Threk after the training was complete. You need to understand the principles so you can solve problems I never anticipated. That's what education is. Gateway Station signed Earth's treaty within a year. They became the major trade hub of the new Commonwealth, where ships traveled safely because qualified engineers maintained the systems properly. The economic recovery took longer. Jiwon Lee had been right that the pain needed to last. But eventually, even she returned to help rebuild the banking systems. Her conditions were strict. Complete transparency, fair compensation for all financial workers, and security protocols that couldn't be bypassed by executives wanting convenience over safety. Security is expensive and inconvenient, she told the new banking consortium. That's the point. If you want my systems, you follow my rules. No exceptions. They agreed. Within 2 years, galactic currency stabilized. Within 5, the economy was growing again. But this time, the people who maintained the security systems were recognized and rewarded appropriately. The political transformation was the most dramatic. The old council officially dissolved 18 months after humanity's return. The collapse was inevitable once member species realized they could negotiate directly with Earth and get better terms than the council offered. A constitutional convention was called on neutral ground. Representatives from every species that wanted to participate gathered to design a new government. Eun-ji-an, the young representative who had argued for humanity's return, served as one of Earth's chief negotiators. The negotiations took 3 years. They were often heated, sometimes bitter, but always honest. The resulting Galactic Commonwealth was nothing like the old council. Representation was based on population, not arbitrary quotas. Voting power was earned through contribution, not historical precedent. Minority species had protected rights that couldn't be overruled by majority vote. Most importantly, credit for work went to those who did the work. No more supervisors taking credit for their staff. No more dismissing contributions from younger or smaller species. Every being's value was recognized. Humans didn't dominate the new Commonwealth, but they were finally respected as equals. Their seat at the table was secure because it was earned, not granted. Dae-ho Kim attended the Commonwealth's founding ceremony as Earth's senior ambassador. He was 78 years old now, ready to retire after 50 years of service. As he watched the new government take its oath, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. After the ceremony, young representatives and students surrounded him, asking questions about the withdrawal. One young Varan asked, "Ambassador Kim, why did you come back? After we treated you so poorly, you could have stayed isolated forever." Dae-ho considered the question carefully. Because the withdrawal was never about revenge, it was about teaching. We left so you could see what we contributed. We stayed away so you could feel the consequences of dismissing that contribution. We came back because we believe in second chances. But more than that, we came back because despite everything, Humans believe in building rather than destroying. Another student, a Nalari who had survived the genocide, asked, "But so many died. Millions died because you stayed away. How do you live with that?" "With difficulty," Deho admitted. "Every one of those deaths weighs on us. But we also know that returning too early would have saved those lives while teaching nothing. The galaxy would have resumed taking us for granted, and eventually, a worse crisis would have occurred. Sometimes the hardest choice is the right choice." He retired shortly after, returning to Earth to spend his final years in peace. His legacy was secure. He was the human who said no, who walked away, who taught the galaxy that respect must be earned. Hae-Jin Park never fully retired. She became the Commonwealth's first Surgeon General, overseeing a medical corps that was truly cooperative. Alien doctors and human doctors worked as equals, learning from each other, sharing knowledge freely. Minho Choi returned to Earth after 10 years of training the next generation of engineers. He opened an academy that accepted students from every species, teaching them not just technical skills but the philosophy of maintenance and care that humans had mastered. Jiwan Lee remained prickly and demanding, but her students loved her for it. She taught them that security wasn't about clever tricks. It was about discipline, attention to detail, and refusing to compromise standards for convenience. 20 years after the withdrawal, a young Varan student named Silith sat in a human-taught engineering class on Gateway Station. Her teacher was Gina Bay, a human who had been only a child when the withdrawal happened. "Teacher Gina," Silith asked, "why did humans ever come back? We treated you terribly. We stole credit for your work. We dismissed your contributions. Why forgive us?" Gina smiled. "Because walking away was never about punishment. It was about teaching. And because, despite everything, humans believe in second chances. We believe that people can learn from mistakes and become better. You've proven that belief correct. But what if we forget? What if future generations take you for granted again? Then we'll teach the lesson again. But I don't think you will forget. Pain is a powerful teacher, and the galaxy learned through terrible pain. Those lessons aren't easily forgotten." Silith thought about this. "My grandmother was saved by Dr. Park during the plague. She tells me stories about the dark time when humans were gone. She says we must never forget what we lost. Your grandmother is wise. But don't just remember what you lost. Remember what you gained. You gained partners instead of servants. You gained teachers instead of tools. You gained a commonwealth instead of a council. That's worth remembering too." On Earth, in the Hall of the Silent Walk, a memorial stood. It listed the names of every being who had died during the withdrawal period. Human and alien, friend and stranger, all were remembered. The inscription read, "They chose silence so that all voices might one day be heard." Daeho Kim had proposed the memorial before his death. He wanted humanity to never forget the cost of the lesson they taught. Pride was dangerous. Arrogance was deadly. Dismissing others led to disaster. These truths must be remembered. But the memorial also included a second inscription, added by Unji An after Daeho passed. They walked away in silence. They returned with compassion. They taught through absence and rebuilt through presence. This is the way of wisdom. The galaxy was at peace. Not perfect peace, never that, but honest peace, based on mutual respect. Species still argued and competed, but they did so as equals. Credit went to those who earned it. Work was valued appropriately. Respect was given freely. And in classrooms across 1,000 worlds, young beings of every species learned about the Silent Walk. They learned about humanity's withdrawal. They learned about the consequences of taking people for granted. They learned about the power of walking away. But most importantly, they learned about the power of returning, of giving second chances, of believing that people could change and become better. The humans had walked away in silence. They had returned with hope, and they had helped build a galaxy worth living in. That was the legacy that would endure.